Well, there it is. Street Fighter 6 is official, but it looks like quite a departure from the series that we're all so familiar with.
Alright, you ready?
All last week, Capcom had a mysterious countdown timer running, and when it ticked to 0, we were all treated to a teaser trailer for Street Fighter 6, which is actually the 40th entry in the Street Fighter franchise. 40? Is that right? 40? God. When it comes to Street Fighter, some things never change, and the teaser trailer reassures us of this, showing good old Ryu gearing up for battle. But then, everything takes a turn as we see he's facing off against franchise newbie, Luke. Both also have a brand new, slightly grittier art style. And then there's the logo. That's right, the new Street Fighter 6 logo set the internet on fire this week, as people debated the merits and downsides of the changes in well-structured, reasonable arguments online, obviously. Some, who did some more digging, found that the logo was purchasable on the Adobe stock website for $80. Or at least a suspiciously familiar logo was. Whether or not Capcom changes the logo as we get closer to the release, or they stick with this, remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, Ryu has not been skipping leg day. So, love it or hate it, Street Fighter 6 is well and truly on its way. But the question is, when? What can we expect to see from this latest iteration, and should fans of the series be excited? I'm now joined by GamesRadar's Deputy News Editor Ali Jones to answer all these questions and more. So, thanks for joining me, Ali. Now, that was a pretty short teaser that we got for Street Fighter 6, but I'm curious, are there any details that stood out to you, and are you excited for the next mainline entry in the series?
Of course I'm excited. Street Fighter is one of the classics. You know, you think about all of gaming, and Street Fighter has kind of always been there, at least since the days of 2, if not the original. In terms of what jumped out, it's a really short trailer, but what I do think is interesting, in particular alongside Ryu, is the inclusion of Luke, the most recent arrival to the series as a whole, alongside this absolute classic of this absolute staple, suggests that, they're looking to keep the old and the new next to each other. And I think that's exciting in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people were also pointing out kind of a new art style, right? A little bit grittier, a little bit more realistic maybe. What stood out to you about that? Do you think that's definitely going to be the change that we see, or is this teaser trailer maybe not a real representation of what the game will look like?
It's difficult to tell, because I think that obviously everything's subject to change at this point.
Yeah.
But it would be a fascinating direction for them to take that in. Street Fighter is so bright and colourful, and you have alternatives in the fighting game space like Mortal Kombat, for example, that own that grittier, darker colour palette a little bit better. So I'd be fascinated to see if it comes together. It would be a really interesting new direction, and it would be interesting as well to see whether the gameplay itself would match some of that grit, some of that darkness.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see. And speaking of, when do you think we're likely to see more? Is it coming at E3, do we think more, or maybe Christmas, maybe even further down the line?
I think we'll see more at E3. I'd be really surprised if it doesn't show up. You don't drop something in spring and not be prepared to show it off in the summer. Quite how that takes shape is yet to be seen, obviously, with the disruption around E3. But in terms of release date, that is a lot more up in the air, obviously. We've not necessarily heard huge amounts about this from the rumour mills before now. So could be more to drop throughout the year. Fighting game tournaments, as they sort of pop up over the course of time, obviously that's a really good way for Capcom to speak to the people who really care about these games.
Yeah.
I'd expect to see more in the summer, and then maybe a release towards Christmas and the start of 2023.
Well, there you have it. Let me know down in the comments below which character you're excited to see revealed in Street Fighter 6 next. And remember to subscribe to GamesRadar on YouTube so you don't miss any of our future reviews, news, and guides.